So now we're going to look at Erikson's psychosocial development. So Erikson's a neo-Freudian. That means he is a follower of Freud's. So what you need to know here is that Erikson is a neo-Freudian. He looks at the development of us socially, but psychoanalytically. So the infancy, he says, at this time you need to develop trust. And basic trust just means that your caregiver actually will come when you cry. So infants develop a sense of basic trust. Now, if this isn't developed, then the child develops mistrust, and that child will not move on to the next stage. In the toddlerhood years, if a child has developed trust, then they get to move to autonomy versus shame and doubt. In the toddlerhood years, toddlers are supposed to learn to exercise will. And that's why the terrible twos are the terrible twos, is because they want to do what they want to do. And if you make them shame, if you make them doubt that they can do this, then children develop shame and doubt. So autonomy, if you get a check mark on that, you get to move on to the next stage. If you don't, then you stay in shame and doubt. You don't feel like you can ever exercise your free will. If you have autonomy, then you move on to initiative versus guilt. The preschool years are 3 to 5 years. So preschoolers learn to initiate tasks and carry out plans, or they feel guilty about those efforts to be independent. So during the preschool years, the 3 to 5 years, children want to learn how to dress themselves. They want to learn how to feed themselves. They want to start learning all these things because they're taking initiative. They're go-getters. And if you make them feel guilty because they spilt the milk all over the table, then the child feels guilty, and they'll continue to feel guilty forever because it's a stage there. If you get initiative, you move on to the elementary school years, confidence versus inferiority. This is normally 6 years to puberty. So children learn the pleasure of applying themselves to tasks, or they feel inferior. In confidence, they feel that they are a yes, they did it. Okay. If they don't feel that, yes, I did it, I've completed a task, then they feel inferior. This is kind of why we have all those ceremonies for kids in elementary school years. Oh, you graduated the first grade, let's have a graduation dinner. Oh, you graduated the second grade, let's have another one. That's that confidence thing. So adolescent years, we look at teen years into the 20s. This is identity versus role confusion. This is why the teenagers, like, one day you're a goth, the next day you're an emo, the next day you're, you know, just a regular, everyday athletic kid, or you're just a regular kid. So you try on all these different identities, all these different roles, and you find the role that fits you. And if you don't form your identity, then you are confused about your role. You haven't accepted who you are. So this is why, like, and I gave you the example in class. Some kids are gay when they're teenagers. Meet them at the class reunion, they're not gay. And that was that role confusion. They didn't know if they were or they weren't. Okay? In the young adulthood years, if you get the identity, you get to move on to intimacy versus isolation. At this, we're looking at 20s to early 40s, and what we're looking at is young adults struggling to form close relationships and to gain the capacity for intimate love. Now, he's not saying that you have to have love with another individual in an intimate way, like a marriage, but he's saying that you have like a strong friendship, a friendship where you feel the trust, where you can tell everything about yourself, or you feel isolated. So if you get the intimacy part, then you move on to middle adulthood years and you get generativity versus stagnation. And generativity versus stagnation, in the middle age years, people discover the sense of contributing to the world. You know, I've contributed through my work, my kids have turned out great, you know, I have something that I've done to make the world a better place. In the stagnation part, if they don't feel like they've done something at work, or they don't feel like they've contributed to the world and their family, then they feel like they haven't done their purpose in life. And so they stagnate. And then if you actually get the generativity, you move on to the late adulthood years, late 20s and up. So this is integrity versus despair. And during this stage, we see people reflecting on their life. And you can see this a lot with older people who are going to church or who want to contribute some other way to society. So they feel like they've done a good thing. They either feel satisfied or they feel like an absolute failure with their life. So when you look at this is Erikson's psychosocial development. And I would suggest that you know this in the years past, they have asked questions about where would a typical 7-year-old be on all these stage theories, and you would have to know it. So when we look at forming the identity, you know, this is typical for teenagers. You change your hair, you know, wear different clothes, but that's okay because you're finding your identity. Parent and peer influence. During the teen years, parents don't have as much of a role in influencing you anymore. It's more of your peers. So parents' role, like your interaction with your parents, starts to decline as you get older. Particularly the warm, fuzzy interaction. So when you're young, you love mommy and daddy, and in your teenage years, you hate mommy and daddy. But that's okay, because one day you'll grow up just to be like them. So emerging adulthood spans from 18 to 25. So this is when you are the young adult and you're trying to figure out, you know, what you're going to do with your life, college, whatever it is, okay? So in the adulthood years, what you have here is adulthood begins sometime after a person's mid-20s. And adulthood is more about like leaving the childhood adolescent stage. When we look at the physical development of a person, we see their peak normally in their early 20s, around their 20s, and then afterwards it just starts to decline. And that's why when athletes are in the NFL or the NBA in their 20s, they do awesome. And then in their 30s, they become a liability to their team because getting hurt, breaking your arm in your 30s is a lot more severe than breaking your arms in your 20s. In the 20s, you like bounce back. In your 30s, you're starting to kind of fall apart already. Middle adulthood years, we look at muscle strength, reaction time, your sensory abilities, your cardiac output. All this stuff starts to decline in your mid-20s. So around the age of 50, women go through menopause, and remember, menopause is just an end to the reproductive cycle. Men don't have menopause, but they have a menopause where they kind of have a decrease in their testosterone levels as well. Old age, life expectancy, women actually outlive men, and they outlive men at some points because men do stupid things to impress women, like drive too fast in a car or, you know, walk on a bridge that you shouldn't be walking on, you know, stupid things. So after the age of 70, hearing, distance perception, the sense of smell, all this stuff diminishes. This is why elderly people overseason their food. It's why they need you to repeat things. It's why they pull out in front of you when they're driving. It's because their distance perception, that reaction time, all that stuff is starting to decline. And it's starting to decline because, you know, it's sad to say, but the neural activity is starting to decline and the body is starting to slowly decline. So old age, motor abilities, at age 70, our motor abilities start to decline. So a 70-year-old is no match for a 20-year-old individual, and fatal accidents also increase around this age. So this is where we're seeing this. Dementia is a disease that we see. It's not normal. It's in the abnormal. So it's in the DSM-4, the Manual for Abnormal Disorders. And it's not a normal part of aging, but the risk of dementia increases in our later years. Alzheimer's disease, we see, remember, that there's a decrease in their amount of acetylcholine, ACH. And so what we're seeing with Alzheimer's disease is that your brain is slowly having damage. And what you see is that the first memories, like your oldest memories, those are the last ones that you actually lose. You lose your current memories, the most recent, first. Do cognitive abilities like memory, creativity, and intelligence decline with age the same way physical abilities do? When we look at aging and we look at memory, as we age, we remember some things very well. And we remember some things very well. We normally remember stuff that we've had a lot of practice at recall and a lot of practice at remembering. But when you look at newer things, that's going to be a little bit harder. So recognition memory does not decline with age, and material that is meaningful is recalled better than meaningless material. So they'll recall certain things, you know, they'll recall anything that is actually important. And that's what most people do, actually. Most people recall what's important. So prospective memory, remember to. So longitudinal studies, they suggest that intelligence remains relative as we age, and we look at fluid versus crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence is the ability to reason rapidly, like you can go through material quick. And crystallized is the accumulated knowledge and skills. So fluid intelligence declines. So the ability to go back and forth real quick with material, that declines as we get older. Crystallized intelligence is those hard facts. This is actually something that continues to accumulate as we get older. It does not decline. So fluid is on the decline. Crystallized, you just keep increasing more of your factual knowledges. So a number of cognitive abilities decline with age. However, vocab, general knowledge, that increases. So that is your crystallized intelligence, vocab, general knowledge. Social development. As we get older, there's some differences between us. So many differences between young and old are not simply based on physical and cognitive abilities, but it can be because of your life events. Older people have a different perspective on how things are. Psychologists doubt that adults pass through an orderly sequence of age-bound stages. That's why they're critics of that. That midlife crisis at 40, it's not necessarily everybody goes through it. Some people go through it, but most people actually go right through their 40s perfectly normal. But what we do see about midlife crises is that if a major life event has occurred, something that's changed their life, like divorce or a new marriage, that's when we actually see a midlife crisis. So the adulthood commitments. Love and work are defining themes in your adulthood years. And when we look at evolutionary psychologists, they believe that commitment has survival value. Women commit to a man, the man helps her survive and helps her baby survive. And the woman helps the man survive as well. So parents that stay together are likely to leave a good, viable future generation. So divorce is it's not bad. I mean, it happens. But the parents who stay together, those are the kids who will also probably have a partner that they stay with. Adulthood commitments. Happiness stems from working in a job that fits your interests and provides you with a sense of competence and accomplishment. So I've told you all along, find a job that makes you happy. Well-being across the lifespan. Most people actually feel pretty satisfied with their life across the spectrum. Successful aging, you look at biological, psychological, and social cultural effects here. So successful aging, you know, like obviously Alzheimer's and dementia, you wouldn't want those. And typically your brain, you keep developing it, you keep doing new activities to fight off dementia and Alzheimer's. Psychological outlook, you know, you have a positive or optimistic outlook on life. You're physically and mentally active. Social cultural, you have family, you have a support network, you get out, you go about and do things. Death and dying, remember Kubler-Ross's stages, and it's in your review sheet. There is no normal reaction or series of grief stages after the death of a loved one. Kubler-Ross did do, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she did do a stage theory, but you can, you know, not everybody's the same. Grief is just different for other people. So continuity in stages. Researchers who view development as a slow, continuous process are generally those who emphasize experience and learning. Biologists, on the other hand, view maturation and development as a series of genetically predisposed steps or stages. So Piaget, Kohlberg, Erickson, those are your stage theorists. Please know those stages because they do pop up on that AP exam. Stability and change. So lifelong development requires stability and change. Personality gradually stabilizes people age. We see your personality really developing by your teen years. And however, this does not mean that our traits do not change over a lifetime. Like temperament seems to be more stable than some of the other ones. You're easy or you're a difficult person. I've gone through chapter 4 in the David Myers textbook with you guys, and I hope that you study this. This is a pretty good portion of the AP exam. You're looking at about 10%. Thank you, and have a good day.